Greeting Pokemon trading card game fans. Today we're getting into my version of Cynthia's Garchomp EX. Here are the numbers that I will be going over in a minute. Alright, here's my usual deck flow kind of laid out. I did not spend the time typing and adding all the words because we'll go through it and read them and it'll be fine. For starters, we got 4 Gibles, 4 Gabites, and 3 Garchomp EXs. The reason for those numbers are I'm already short on basics. We'll get into that, but you just want to be able to start Gible if at all possible. The 4 Gabite, similarly, you might already guess that we'll use Team Evolution to evolve, but being able to draw into them does make your life easier. So we're playing a full 4. I was going 3 for a while, but the 4th one really has come in, I think, to make the deck better. Only 3 Cynthia's Garchomp EXs, because through our Night Stretchers, I'm under the impression that you're only going to need 2 of them at a time with your 3rd extra. So the only time the 3 has become an issue is when I have priced 2 of them. That's going to be a fringe case, and I'm not going to change my deck building to compensate for that. If we look at the Gabite, it has the ability, once during your turn, you may search your deck for Cynthia's Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. A lot of this deck strength comes for that ability, if you can't already guess, so it makes evolving without the use of items and Pokemon search really easy, and makes you pretty solid into these item lock Budews. Budew is lower on the popularity scale now compared to what it was even a month ago. However, it's still useful. As far as attacks go, it's the Garchomp EX with the good attacks. We have a Corkscrew Dive attack, 1 fighting, 100. You can draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. Phenomenal self-draw. This card line is just super self-sustainable, and that's just why I've loved playing it in the last week or so. The second attack is Draconic Buster, hitting for 260, and you do discard all energy from this Pokemon, so it does require you to play around that concept, but it's a pretty solid attack for a pretty beefy Pokemon that only gets beefier with attacks that only get stronger, and that'll make more sense in a minute if you're not already familiar with it. The downside is this grass weakness. It's just kind of added to another group of other decks that are weak to grass. Charizard, even though Charizard's on the down low. The new Grimmsnarl and the Roaring Moon decks are all weak to grass. So I do feel like going into NAIC, there will be some grass decks that do some nasty damage. But I'm sticking with this deck and taking that risk to Peep the free retreat that Garchomps usually have, and that is just pretty useful. All around great Pokemon. For support, we have a 2/2 Roselia Roserade line. Roselinas, or I say Roselia, it's okay. Don't do anything crazy, but it's our Roserades with the ability Cheer On to Glory. Attacks used by your Cynthia's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, and they do stack. So, if I have one of them up, Corkscrew Dive does 130. If they're both up, Corkscrew Dive does 160. And likewise, 260 goes to 290, and then 320. 320 is a pretty important number. But more on that when we get deeper into the deck. Next, we have a 1 of Cynthia's Spiritomb. I really want to run 2 of them, and I probably will. Looking at its attack, it does 10 damage for each damage counter on all of your benched Cynthia's Pokemon. This attack's damage is infected by weakness. So, sadly, Spiritomb cannot hit for weakness on Gardevoir, which sucks. However, you can do quite a bit of damage, and I have, when you have, say, 2 Garchomps that both have Dragapults who have hit into them. Spiritomb comes in and swings in with 400 damage or more as a counterplay. So Spiritomb is phenomenal into those decks that don't one-shot your Garchomp. And as we'll get to in a second, we just make it more and more difficult to one-shot Garchomps if you're not a grass deck. So Spiritomb, a great necessary one of. I would like it to be 2, because depending on the matchup, it's great to be able to chain into each other. But if you're in a position where you're using one Spiritomb, using 2 of them is what I've heard people refer to as a win more card. Having one Spiritomb is necessary, having 2 is a win more, and having 2 isn't allowing you to necessarily win in circumstances where you otherwise would have lost. So that is why I've kind of cut it down to 1 for now. 1 of Shaymin, bench barrier. It's because my wife plays Terra Box. Like, nothing sucks worse than starting only having 2 or 3 of these Gibles in play and then having 2 of them get knocked out because of the bench attack. So the 1 of Shaymin is necessary. We'll talk about its 80 HP being difficult to get in a second, but we'll get back to that. Tatsugiri, a forgotten lover of mini decks. We have the ability where you get to look at the top 6 and find a supporter. Massive consistency buff in my opinion. This is another one which I might start running a second of to help my basics count, but it is reachable through Buddy-Buddy Poffin. So there are situations where if I got nothing better to do, I'd rather them knock out Tatsugiri and allow me to risk the knocking out of the Tatsugiri by putting it in the active. So pushing it and saving one of my Gibles. I've done it and I will continue to do it. So Tatsugiri is a great inclusion in my opinion. Now, looking at some of the support for Buddy-Buddy Poffin, necessary between the Gibles, Roselinas, Spiritombs, and Tatsugiri. 3 Pokégear to add the consistency to grab supporters, because what we really want to do is start with an Arven, and we'll look more into that flow, but I just really want to have an Arven at the start of the game. So I've tried to set it up to make that as best the case as possible. 3 Iono for draw hand reception, 2 boss, 1 counter catcher, because our A-Spec is not prime catcher, so having 3 gusts, 2 of which can be grabbed through our already set up supporter line, good by me. Having 2 outs, 2 energy, searchable through Arven, useful. We'll talk about energy counts and how that effect is. Our first potential new item tool, if you're not familiar with this deck, is Cynthia's Power Weight. That one is attached to Cynthia's Pokemon. That Pokemon gets plus 70 HP. You did hear me right. 140, 140, 200, 400, 170. It makes these, especially obviously the best case scenario is you have a 400 HP Garchomp. That makes it where it is still 2-shotable. You know, looking at you, 200 attackers, I can do 200 or more, but it does mean it is more difficult in some situations, especially the decks who are designed specifically to get that 330. It makes it to where you have to 2-shot the Garchomp EX, which is great for retreating into another one, retreating into Spiritomb, and just benefiting from that. So, not always a big change, but even if it's against Roaring or Raging Bolt and Goldingo, where they just have to dig for more resources to try to one-shot, it's better in the long run. 2 evolutions into my flow of setup, 2 Night Stretchers, because sometimes you just need them to get the energy or a Pokemon. 1 Switch, looking at decks like that can sob. They love grabbing a Roserade and trying to get it stuck, or Grimmsnarl trying to slow you down. And 1 of Switch to break out of sob and punish has helped me win quite a few games just by punishing that. So the 1 of Switch is kind of necessary despite all of the good free retreating I have going on and access to energies for retreating off of a lot of these 1 of retreat costs. 1 of Ultra Ball, used to run 2, but then I realized the Ultra Ball is a worst case scenario. If I'm having to Ultra Ball to find Gabites, I'm having a bad time of it. That is just a oh no situation card to grab with Arven, so that's why I'm only running 1 Ultra Ball. Secret Box is my A spec because that allows me to find a lot of good pieces. 1 of Rare Candy, similar to a oh no, I wasn't able to find Arven Techno Machine Evolution. I can still Rare Candy into a Garchomp should the situation arise. Just 1 of helps consistency. I did have been running Super Rod. It is at the top of my list for being cut. But against decks that do successfully get a lot of knocks on my babies, or my littler Pokemon, Super Rod to put Pokémon-Inner-G into the deck to be searched out has been useful. But I don't know if that is I don't know if it's a band-aid on a losing situation card when I could just raise my consistency otherwise. Looking at you basics for starting the game. But I will test on that. I didn't want to show anything different. I just wanted to show you the list I was testing the last couple of days. And I have 3 stadiums to show. Are these your best 3 stadiums possible? Maybe not. But here are my reasoning. The first list I looked at had 2 Teams Rockets Watchtowers, and it played Unfair Stamp. Unfair Stamp just isn't doing it in this era of Fez and search through Knockdowns. It just wasn't cutting it, and so I reached for the Secret Box for the consistency of it. So because of that, I can now search for that Team Rockets Watchtower. But if it's a list that doesn't benefit us to put it in play, even if it does, there's been plenty of times where I might only have 1 Buddy-Buddy Poffin that I grab, which is fairly often, and I just want to be able to grab my Shaymin, grab another Gible, increase my just a good grab from Secret Box for consistency. Is that quick editor note? Here in the video, I spend a while talking about the Pokemon headquarters and the difference between potentially that and Gravity Mountain, the -30 stadium that affects stage 2s, and I go on and on. I'm going to cut over this just to say I did cut the Pokemon League headquarters in favor of the Gravity Mountain, and here's the short of it. Headquarters helps me against decks that are already negatively affected by Team Rocket Stadium. Raging Bolt, Terrapagos type decks, Terrabox are all already negatively affected by Team Rocket's Watchtower, and the headquarters, because of all the energy excel, they tend to be able to get around that. And I then messed myself up, because not only does it negatively affect my use of Spiritomb, I put it in play and it negatively affected my use of TM Evolution. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so I cut it in favor of Rocky Mountain. Yes, I'm a stage 2. It does take my 330 guy into 300, but with the tool, it takes my 400 guy to 370. If you're knocking out 400, there's a high chance you're already hitting that 370, and I'm still being 2 hit by things that 4 would hit 340, 330. Grimmsnarl, Gardevoir, and Dragapult. It helps me out a lot. Those are our pieces. So here's what I've kind of seen, or the intention of how they work, and some things I've noticed. Best case scenario, we have Gible, or another one of our one-pricers, in the active. I'm able to Buddy-Buddy Poffin, or I have an energy in hand, and we have an Arven, or Pokégear into Arven, or a Tatsugiri into Arven. I digress, right? Best case is we can Arven into a Team Evolution and end Secret Box. We look and make sure there's another Team Evolution, but with the 2 of them, you only need 1. So you use the Team Evolution as fodder for one of the 3 cards you need to discard, and you go grab your Buddy-Buddy Poffin to grab 2 Gibles to evolve. You will have a small hand size, so Ionoing after this is useful, so grabbing the Iono. grabbing the TM evolution. Sometimes I'll already have one in hand, so grabbing a power weight is the next best thing, and then a stadium depending on the situation. If you feel like your opponent's going to pop off and start getting knockouts, grab a Gible. If you know they're about to start hitting the bench, grab a Shaymin. Otherwise, if you're confident in being able to slow them down against a Terra, a Hoo-Hoo knocked out deck, grab the Watchtower. Otherwise, the headquarters are good against basic decks. We already went over that. A lot of variation you can go there. When you have a lot of Gibles in play, 2, just as often I might have 3 in play. It only allows you to evolve 2, but one of these can grab another one to evolve. Then with the 2 left, you might finish a Roselia evolution, or you start it and then one grabs the Garchomp EX if you don't have Garchomp EX in hand to evolve, and then be able to swing very consistently turn 2. Iono is good because it is not always you're going to have an energy at the start of the game, which can affect your ability to pull this combo, but much less rare will you have multiple, so being able to Iono into a lot more cards raises your ability to grab another one or grab an Earthen Vessel. And with that, I will talk about some of my odds and stuff. If I pull up the deck builder, this is Limitless TGC callouts, tools, and statistics. We look at, as the deck is right now, 9 basic Pokemon, 7 basic energy, so that means 30% of the time we're mulliganing. And I've mulliganed 2 or 3 times before. I expect to mulligan with this deck. That is not optimal. When we do start, obviously most of the time it's going to be the case that we only have 1 basic to start with. Again, that's not optimal. It's doable. I've seen some success with the way it's playing, but I feel like I'm going to add 1 or 2 basics and fix that. Now, we now have less than a 25% chance, closer to 1 out of 5 times. And now 50-50, 50% of the time you're going to start with 2 basics, and about 50% of the time only 1. That's okay. I'd like that a lot better. Yes, There's going to be times when you just have a Sudowoodo and nothing else, and that's going to suck. There's going to be times when Iono into 2 Tatsugiris mid-game, and you're not going to want that, and that's going to suck. But with all the other consistency going on, I'll take it. And speaking of consistency, one other thing. This deck thins itself. By turn 2, 3 or 4 of these, 2 or 3 of these, 1 to 2 of these, multiple of these, definitely one of those, 1 to 2, 1 or 1, 2 of these, definitely 1 to 2 of these, etc. are all used out of the deck. That means your deck is much smaller, which means things like Pokégearing into a supporter, Pokégearing into your boss, Tatsugiring into your boss, Ionoing into energy you need for attacking, all are higher than decks that purely search, right? It thins itself. It means I'm getting those bosses more consistently, and I'm getting resources more consistently. And that is my favorite thing about this deck, and why I think it's performing pretty well. I'll come back and look at this for a second. This is a list I've been testing. It is not a terrible list. I've given some pros, I've given some cons. About 2/3 of the time, you're going to start with an energy. Slightly less percent of the time, you're going to have a Pokégear into Arven into Team Evolution, or have the Team Evolution. So I don't know all the statistics there, but a good solid amount of the time, you're going to have the energy. Let's say 60% of the time, you're going to be able to pull off the Arven Evolution play. And from there, you've grabbed the Art Zone if you needed another Pokemon. You just have your setup going. The other percent of the time, if they're also being slow, you're fine. You attach them in Gabite. You thin, you Arven for a Rare Candy, you evolve, you attach, you're swinging, you're fine. This deck is consistent. It thins itself out. It's got great techs. We're doing good. Now, another thing that if you haven't noticed, you hit for weakness on quite a few Pokemon. Fez, Terapagos, Bloodmoon, all Pokemon that are fairly decently played. Specifically Fez. I've seen a lot of matches. So, the one biggest issue that some people are trying, that have built decks and other ways to solve, is the fact that Draconic Buster discards energy away from it. What I've found is I very rarely find myself in a situation where I don't have the energy I need to attach and swing. Because this Pokemon most of the time is being 2-hit, I'm most of the time attaching 2 energy and swinging big and winning an interaction. That being compounded by the fact that if I have a Roserade in play, I am one-shotting the Bloodmoons, the Fezes, the Terapagoses, and I can start early with 1 energy, turn 2, 1 energy, taking a hit, turn 3, attaching an energy, taking a big knockout, turn 4, gusting the Fez that you're definitely going to see with 1 energy, putting you at 2 prizes left. And even then, if they're able to knock out 2 guys in a row, then you're playing a grass deck, because nothing else is doing that consistently. And even if they are, it's a Raging Bolt and you're fine. Because even 2-shotting Goldingos, 130, you're fine. The decks who are then playing Blood Moon after that, if I can take a big knockout and then 1 energy of Fez and Blood Moon, I'm chilling. And with 7 energy, Night Stretchers, to boot, I have not found... That's a lie. I can remember one time where I didn't have the energy I needed to attack, and that's because I misplayed. So, the Power Glass I tried to play before was, I'm going to say, a win more card. The only times it was working is when I was already in a winning position and not being counter-knocked. And then, besides that, there's no other good acceleration I was able to find that worked with this deck. Unless you try the Monkey Dory Darkness Energy Crispin build, which I'm not going to say is bad. I didn't like it because I think it set up less than this deck sets up, and in a way that was detrimental to its performance. I could be wrong, but that is why I'm not playing the Monkey Dory Darkness Energy Crispin builds. Although I could maybe do it, I just like the max consistency, max take some hits, dish some Spiritomb out, and profit. So I'm going to leave that here. I'm excited to play in the NAIC, and I'll let y'all know how bad I'm probably going to do. So until then, catch y'all on the flip side.